remember on December 31st, 2019 in Las Vegas, I had rented the Husqvarna Fartpillen 701. I look behind me and I see a truck. He was coming up on me. So next thing I know, wham! Jetting me like over the handlebars of the bike. The bike went into the rear of the other car.
Well, how's it going? Welcome to another video. First, I'm excited to thank each and every new subscriber and all the viewers over the past week. Thank you very much. So, I really wanted to make this video, but at the same time, you can't make a 5, 10, or 15-minute video and pretend to cover motorcycling. That'd be a disservice to the activity. But, at the same time, there is something to be said. So, falconry, the hunting of wild animals in their natural state and habitat by means of a trained bird of prey. What does this have to do with motorcycling? A long time ago I watched a show about falconry. The falconer, the man handling the falcon, observed that the bird became noticeably jittery and anxious prior to flight. He said that it was experiencing an adrenaline rush. This reminds me of exactly how I felt the first few months each time I prepped for a ride. Every time I'd start prepping to go out by putting my gear on, I'd notice a spike of adrenaline. Nervousness or excitement was coupled with a sense of real danger, risk, and anticipation of good things to come, all blended into one. Nearly 2 years in, the excitement is very much there, but the physical jitteriness of adrenaline has subsided before the ride. Motorcycling is not only a physically exhilarating experience, it's also immensely mentally stimulating. Combining the two easily makes for an addictive recipe. All your senses are stimulated and engaged. Your actions are also directly reflected back to you by the bike giving you feedback. Sometimes you literally use all your limbs at the exact same time. Left hand clutch, right hand throttle and brake, also while steering with the hands. Left foot gear down, right foot brake. That's rev matching, all while also having the appropriate body position for the circumstance. Maybe this is why many helicopter pilots and airplane pilots also have motorcycle licenses. Mind, limb, and machine function together and become greater than the whole. And this is the marriage of factors that we also chase as motorcyclists. A couple years ago, Keanu Reeves did an interview with GQ where he stated that he goes through withdrawals if he's not riding. I can attest to that. I do end up feeling that this is something I need. It really does become something that makes you feel more yourself by virtue of being a full body and mind stimulant. Perhaps it's addictive because we're more in touch with more of ourselves while riding than when we're just handling life's arbitrary chores. So what about the cons? Something notably absent was the feeling of zen-like peace and surge of creativity and a sense of freedom for me when I started. I was promised this. Every rider talks about feelings of relaxation and the richness of your thoughts and the expansion of your mind state when you're on a bike. But for me, it was absent. Was I doing something wrong? Well, as it turns out, being actively engaged and experiencing freedom and peace on a bike are contradictory. But they all have to do with how you ride. The more spirited you ride, the more engaged you become, and the more your life's issues get pushed to the sidelines in favor of the immediate moment. Whilst if you take a familiar road at a reasonable pace on a motorcycle you do really begin to relax into the ride and your mind does begin to zoom out. It's an incredible phenomenon that's really controlled by your right wrist. When I was totally new, I had to be engaged all the time, even when I wasn't going that fast, so my peace wasn't there. Also, prepping to go out does take a little longer for motorcyclists than if you're just going out in a car. But as I always say, cars are for comfort, motorcycles are for engagement. And so I remedied this by prepping in stages and not rushing. It's pretty annoying to get on your bike only to realize you forgot your gloves. Or your gloves are on, but the key is in your pocket. We've all done that. So risk. Let's face it. I didn't get into motorcycling to have my mind replay scenarios of death and injury late at night. Although the possibility of this should have a very real presence in our minds, if we'd have respect for the activity, it doesn't have to paralyze you. In just about 2 years of being on a motorcycle, I've had some minor mishaps. I also never had trouble sleeping over this.
There's such a depth to motorcycling when it comes to skill, when it comes to safety, when it comes to basically anything. There's a lot of depth there in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of very nuanced things that you don't think about, but you cannot think about until you actually get on a bike. And I remember on December 31st, 2019 in Las Vegas, I had rented the Husqvarna Fartpillen 701 and I was so excited about that bike. I was super stoked about it. It looked amazing. It was so quick. It was just very, very quick bike. And I had my gear on. The sun was setting in Las Vegas and I was kind of off to the strip a little bit. And it was kind of getting dark. I had stopped at a light, at a red light behind the vehicle, and it was just one car in front of me, and then there was the red light. And, I was feeling good. I was right next to a gas station, big intersection. I always make a point to look at my mirrors. I look behind me, and I see a truck with his lights on. Nothing unusual. He was coming up on me at a distance. I could tell he was slowing down, so I looked forward. No big deal. Like that was my habit at that point. If I can make a reasonable assertion that they're gonna do what I think they're gonna do, if I can make a reasonable prediction, then I feel good. So I continue to look forward. So next thing I know, wham! Like somebody just. It feels like this, almost like there's like. It felt like a bunch of people standing behind me, like lifting the rear tire up, and just like jutting me like over the handlebars of the bike, and the bike went into the rear of the other car, and I flew kind of off the bike. I didn't fly off it. I just kind of like tumbled off over the handlebars on the right side. And I get up, bike's on the ground, right next to the car in front of me. I look up. I'm like, I look at the guy. I'm like, what the hell happened? And then other people are looking too. I'm fine. I don't feel anything. The bike is crashed up, but I haven't lifted it up at that point. The guy just takes off through the gas station and just takes the hell off, never to be seen again. Some people got out of their cars to help me out, got the bike into the gas station, and there was some damage to it for sure. Luckily, I had full insurance on it. And these are the things that can happen. And at that point, I remember thinking, this is what everybody's talking about. This is what I had heard everybody talk about that I didn't think could happen to me. And I didn't think would happen to me so quickly and so soon after getting my license. I mean, this is only like the second bike or the third bike I had taken from the rental company. And I remember thinking, statistically speaking, if this is happening so soon after my MSF course, and I had heard of these stories of people getting in crashes through no fault of their own, at that point I was like, statistically speaking, if we extrapolate the timeline forward, something even worse may happen. And that really was kind of like a wake-up call. At that point, it was a weird thing. I never thought I would feel that way, but at that point, I just didn't even want to be on the bike anymore, because I had to think and I had to absorb. Anyway, let's see how we get out of here. Let's see how we get out of here. That's a lot of shit. Imagine taking a poop that big. I mean, see, stunt riders, that's just insane to me. MotoGP racers, that is just insane. We're not even, most motorcyclists are not even approaching any of those limits. And so it can go really deep, and it's fascinating for me. I'm not saying that I'm necessarily getting into motorcycling to do that. I think every motorcyclist enjoys the feeling of freedom and being able to go anywhere. I think what makes motorcycling so fascinating is the engagement you get with the machine. And the feeling of freedom.
I've known a few pilots that have motorcycles, and I think they have motorcycles because of how engaged you have to be. Probably just like flying. I have never flown an aircraft, but I can imagine that you have to be very, very engaged and keep a lot of variables in your mind to successfully operate an aircraft. And I think with motorcycling, it's similar, that it's very dangerous, and you have to have a lot of variables that you constantly have to be mindful of to be safe. And I think that engagement is what makes motorcycling so fun, because you get to do that every moment, every single moment when you're riding. You don't get you don't get to just kind of put your mind in autopilot when you're riding. You don't get to do that because you're probably not going to survive very long. You know, people say, and I've had the same experiences, when you're in a car, sometimes if you go down the same roads, you know, you just kind of don't notice how the kilometers just end up passing you by without you noticing them. Well, that can't really happen on a bike, in my mind. Maybe people that have ridden bikes for many years, the same roads, and they're very experienced, maybe they can have something that approaches that. But I think the engagement aspect of it is fascinating. Now, I will say something interesting, that I personally love riding in the city. I don't know what it is. I mean, I would rather be in a city amongst cars than on a road like this. I think for me it's more of the mental stimulation, even though the physical sensation of riding a bike is, you know, second to none in my opinion. But the mental stimulation for me is equally as engaging, because, you know, I kind of play this game like the what if game. Like, what if this car pulls in front of me? What if there's an accident in front of me? What if a car creeps up on me really rapidly? What do I have to do? Like, you always have to play these games like the what if this happens, and you constantly have to keep your mind engaged at all times. And over time you learn that even then you're not fully aware of everything, because there's experiences and situations that happen that you couldn't have planned for. And let's be honest, that's the unfortunate truth. I mean, even the most aware, experienced rider can get into an accident, and that may not be of any fault of his own. Maybe a tree falls on him, maybe there's a mechanical failure. I mean, there's a lot of things, unfortunately, that are out of your control, but I think that's also, fortunately, what forces you to be very engaged. So smooth.
Isn't it crazy that no matter how much we learn, or even who we learn from, there's always even more to discover? For me, as a new rider, it's both exciting and very humbling. This is just my touching the surface of all this. Clearly, I addressed a very small piece of the whole activity. I did not talk about the engagement you have maintaining your bike over time. I didn't talk about growing with your bike. I didn't talk about experiencing different bikes. I didn't talk about the motorcycling community. And there's a lot more that I didn't talk about, but that was my little piece. Hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, ride safe. Thanks for watching.